Hi everyone, and welcome to a new video. In this video, as you can probably tell by the title, I'm going to be explaining the difference between a psychologist and a counsellor. This is just from my experience and my knowledge about it. So firstly, for those of you who are new here, my name's Mayanthi and I am a qualified counsellor. I work as a private counsellor for about 1 day a week, and then I also work at a university supporting students there. So in terms of my understanding of the difference between a counsellor and a psychologist, I have broken it down into 4 different aspects of being a counsellor and a psychologist that make it different. So the first one is what you study. Now, I studied a Bachelor of Psychology and a Master's in Counselling and Psychotherapy. So that was what I studied, and that's how I became a counsellor. But if you want to become a counsellor, you don't just have to do that process. And I'm talking about in South Australia. I'm not sure how it works in other states in Australia or in other countries. Obviously, it'll be a little bit different. So check with your training providers, universities, wherever you're looking to study. Also, to become a counsellor, you can study social work and kind of major in counselling. I don't think the Master or the Bachelor of Social Work will give you a huge insight into different therapies and therapeutic techniques, but you may want to study social work as your main bachelor or master's and then do a diploma or graduate certificate in counselling to get more of that therapeutic understanding and those techniques that you'd learn. Because when I did the Master of Counselling and Psychotherapy, it was all about different therapeutic approaches and how to practice as a counsellor doing therapy or counselling. To become a psychologist here in South Australia, you need to study the Bachelor of Psychology, which is the bachelor that I did, and then you go on to do an honours year, and that's the 4th year, and then you go on to do a master's, PhD or doctorate. And I've got my notes here, by the way. The second thing I would point out is the qualification that you get after you have studied. So if you do what I did, the Master of Counselling and Psychotherapy, you will graduate as a counsellor. Again, if you complete a diploma or a certificate in counselling, you can call yourself a counsellor. I'll make this point a bit later, but at the moment, anyone can practice as a counsellor, as in they can call themselves a counsellor. Doesn't mean you can register as a counsellor, but doesn't matter what your study background is. If you want to call yourself a counsellor and work as a counsellor, you can. Obviously, I'll explain a bit more about that after. If you do the Bachelors of Psychology, Honours in Psychology, Masters, PhD or Doctorate in Psychology, then you would obviously be qualified as a psychologist, which brings me to my third point, which is registration. So as I was just mentioning, to practice as a counsellor, you don't have to be registered, but if you are registered, you're obviously at a better place to be able to see clients and charge based on their funding. That could be through a disability scheme or through some insurances as well. They allow for counselling. We can't get Medicare funding through being registered as a counsellor, but again, it depends on some people's medical insurance as well. If you don't have a qualification as a counsellor, then you can't register as a counsellor, but you can work as a counsellor. But that would be solely based on private funding, so private clients who pay for their services completely privately. If you are a psychologist, you will have to register with AHPRA, which is, this is in Australia, the Australian Health Practitioners Regulation Authority, and they are what facilitate your professional development, supervision, all of those kinds of requirements. As I've mentioned in past videos, I'm registered with the Psychotherapy and Counselling Federation of Australia. That is what regulates my supervision and professional development and all of those kind of requirements as well. Also guidance around ethics in our practice. So the last point is your actual practice and working as a counsellor or psychologist. So as a counsellor, you're most likely going to be doing therapeutic techniques and applying the different approaches that are out there, whether that's CBT, ACT, mindfulness, narrative therapies, play therapies. There are a massive range, depends what you're trained in. So in regards to a psychologist, that can also happen, you know, sitting on the couch, psychologist talking, client talking about what's going on for them. But for a psychologist, they can also do assessment-based work where they meet with the client, they ask them questions, talk through different things, and then assess what their needs are, or assess for the purpose of a diagnosis of a mental health condition. So a counsellor cannot diagnose a mental health condition, but they can work with someone who does have a mental health condition by providing therapy. A psychologist can diagnose the condition and then also provide treatment or therapy. So the final point I just wanted to make, which I've kind of touched on throughout the video and throughout the points, is a counsellor cannot work as a psychologist, but a psychologist can work as a counsellor. Again, I'm not an expert. I'm just speaking from my experience in the field and through my studies. That's what I've picked up. So I hope this video was helpful for you, and I hope it answered some questions that you may have had about the difference between a counsellor and a psychologist. If you do have any other questions, please do comment down below. If you did like this video, please do give it a thumbs up. If you want to keep up with more of my videos, then I would love it if you would subscribe to my channel. You can click on the little circle here or here, and you can watch my last video on my life as a counsellor, again clicking on the square box either here or here. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye.